Okay, thank you guys for your patience. Again, like I said, thank you for being here to attend the Rock Your Resume workshop. We're going to go over all of the ways in which you can enhance your resume for future job and internship opportunities, especially as you progress in your career development process. We'll go over some do's, some don'ts, the structure of a resume, breaking down different sections, going over some formatting, some tips, things of that nature. Of course, there will be time at the end to address any questions. And yeah, thank you for being here. So I just wanted to give you guys a little overview of our support team here. So as I mentioned, I'm the new director of internships and career services here. So excited to be here, fairly new to the position, but very excited to connect with you guys. We also have Joan Marceau. She's our undergraduate internship and career coordinator. So Joan is located on the Uptown Main Career Campus, whereas I'm located downtown in Milne Hall. And then as you've been hearing me connect with Leslie, we have two wonderful graduate assistants in our office, Leslie and Teuta, who you will also be connecting with if you communicate with our office for assistance or services, etc. Some of our contact information here, as I mentioned, we'll have that at the end of the slideshow as well, but just to kind of give you an overview of our support team. Just wanted to give a quick overview of our mission and services as well. So obviously, as the Office of Career Development, we're here to help you, like I said, as you progress in your career path and work to attain some of those career goals. And that can vary from everything from resumes, as we'll be discussing today, to cover letters, to job internship search, discussion on fellowships, interview preparation, mock interviews, internship job search, job offer and salary negotiations, certainly networking and LinkedIn as well, and how to best connect with some of those alumni and local and other employers. We'll host a variety of sessions similar to this that are both career skills focused, as well as ones that are more employer alumni focused through information sessions. And we'll have that at the end of the slideshow as well. And we also utilize Handshake, which is a recruiting site. Great resource for you guys to access a great amount of job and internship postings. I think there's somewhere around 18,000 plus postings on the site at all times. It's also where we will post all events and programs similar to this, career fairs that we're participating in. It's where you can track your internship that are required for the master's students. So great resource for you. You all have accounts on the site. They're all created for you by the university. So should be all set there. So what is a resume? Just giving an overview. Many of you probably have a resume at this point, although we're dealing with a variety of different students in this session. If you don't, that's okay. Or if you have one and you haven't, updated it in quite some time, that's also okay. Wanted to kind of go over what is a resume and the purpose of it, especially for those students, but for all students as you kind of update and edit your resume. So it is an overview. It's a professional snapshot. So it's essentially an overview of your academic, experiential, and professional background. So this can include education, experiences, activities, achievements, as you're seeing here, strengths, skills, interests, things of that nature. It's there to ultimately advertise these qualities to an employer. So it acts as this dynamic marketing tool. But it's very important in that process that you're being honest. Obviously, it's an honest portrayal of all of that. So it's really an opportunity to kind of market that to employers. And as one of the students had asked already, it's really a chance for you to target and tailor your knowledge and experience to a specific position. So one of the questions that was asked was, do I have to create a different resume for different positions? And the answer isn't black and white, but the short answer is, as I mentioned, if you're applying to similar positions in a similar field, then not as much. Your resume is not going to vary that much from application to application. However, if you're applying to vastly different types of opportunities, whether that's a seasonal position versus an internship in your field, or maybe a campus role like an RA versus a full-time job in your industry, then it will change. Or if you have multiple kind of majors or concentrations, you might be applying to different fields and areas, and then your resume will be tailored and targeted slightly different for each position based on formatting, sections, orders, all of that, and we'll go through all of that. Resumes are living documents. So they're constantly being edited and updated. You know, even myself, being this far along in my career, I've still updated and edited mine recently. So it's something you're going to constantly have and constantly edit and update, hopefully in real time. I would recommend that because it allows you to kind of put your experiences, your skills, and your you know, all of the responsibilities that you had while it's fresh in your mind on your resume. But it's an extremely important document as a whole because it really is your first impression. What's so helpful about networking is if you are actively networking, then it isn't always necessarily, you know, just your first impression, because you are making those connections before potentially you're applying, but that's not always going to be the case, even for those who network, you know, extremely well. So it is going to act as a first impression for some applications where you don't necessarily have any connections to that company. So it's very important that this is in good shape and it's been reviewed, updated, and even, you know, worked on with staff members like myself or the main career office to make sure that it's in strong shape. Because it really is that foot in the door to an interview. So like I said, I wanted to go over some resume do's and don'ts. So, you know, that really kind of touch on how do I write a resume? Oops, my apologies. So first and foremost, like I said, apologies, trying to click on things. It's important for you to be honest, truthful, and logical, right? You really only have one page to work with your resume initially, as you can see there. So it's important that you're getting your point across in terms of your skills, your experiences, et cetera, in a concise manner, and that you're being completely honest and truthful in the process. Sometimes that's not intentional, right? I've had conversations with students where I say, oh, tell me about this particular club organization you're involved in. And they'll say, oh, well, I'm not really involved in them, so I can't really talk about it that much. And I'll say, okay, in that case, it may be something that you either want to remove, or if you decide that you get more involved in them, or in that organization, then you can add to it in the future. Because anything that is on your resume is fair game for employers to ask about in the interview process. And it's also important that you're including information and experiences that you can touch on and further elaborate on. It's important, like I said, that you're going to keep your resume to one page at this point to keep that concise format. And as you're developing your content in your resume, you're going to want to use action verbs in bullet point format to highlight your skills and achievements. This allows you to more concisely address your skills within each experience, and action verbs help support and articulate those skill sets first and foremost. And then you'll use supportive examples and concrete examples to support those skill sets. So you typically want to avoid I statements and begin with those strong action verbs: communicate, collaborate, lead, analyze, etc. With that being said too, you also want to prioritize the top half of your document with the most relevant information, right? So employers do receive a lot of resumes, right? And so they only have so much time to really review and analyze your resume for initial applications. So really important that you're prioritizing relevant information closer to the top of your document. Also important as you're, you know, hoping to give off a strong professional presence, that you're consistent with formatting, right? We wouldn't want all sorts of inconsistencies with font styles, sizing, spacing, etc., because that can give off kind of like a sloppy look. You want it to look nice and neat and clean and professional. So you want to be consistent. If you're going to, you know, underline your section title for your education, you want to do so for all section titles. If you're going to bold the names of the organizations you work for or are involved with, then you're going to want to bold all organizations in that sense. Important to ensure proper tense as well. So current experiences that are ongoing should be listed in present tense, whereas past experiences that are no longer occurring should be listed in past tense. And that's a common misconception, is that students think the tense should be consistent throughout the document. And that's not the case. The tense should be consistent to the dates of the experience. So if you have a current experience that's ongoing, you wouldn't want present tense for one bullet point, past tense for the next bullet point. You want that to all be present tense because it's currently ongoing. You want to divide your experiences into sections to make it nice and easy for employers to access certain information, and for yourself. And again, you prioritize those sections based on relevance and timing, right? So as current students, your education section will be at the top, as we'll go over. And then how you order the rest of your sections will really be based on relevance of those experiences and timing. And as you're including the content in those sections, you want to make sure your experiences are in reverse chronological order for each section. So most recent experiences first to oldest. So that can often lead to students creating 2 sections for their work experience, one for relevant professional experience to incorporate internships, et cetera, that are relevant to what they want to do, and one for additional work experience for maybe more seasonal positions, because maybe they're currently working, you know, as a lifeguard over the summer, but they have a past internship that they want to highlight prior to that. That's a way they can do that, is creating those 2 different sections and prioritizing those sections. As you're creating your content to be results driven, right? Quantify where possible. You know, to the extent that you can show the end result of your skill set or your experience. So let's say you know, completed a big research project and presented to a team within your internship. It's really important to show that you presented not only what you presented, but also to who and to how many people, right? Because that helps support the skill set of presentation, oral communication, and articulating those findings. So being results driven and quantifying helps kind of support those pieces. This is a process. Like I said, these are living documents. So expect to do at least a few drafts of this. And that's what we're here to help with, is to review your documents and go over any possible edits and things of that nature. Hopefully this presentation will get you started as well. And spell check and proofread carefully. So again, it's a first impression. So of course, sometimes there's going to be small grammar errors that occur and get past us, and that's okay. But to the extent that you can avoid that by reviewing it yourself or having a second or a third set of eyes on your document, the better. Lastly, I'll just say before I move on, spell out any acronyms as well, because, you know, there's Albany specific or internship or industry specific acronyms that may make sense for certain employers, but not all, right? So any acronyms that are specific to one organization, you might want to spell out to make that clear. So just some don'ts for you guys as well. So you do not need to include everything, right? Like I said, you only have 1 page to work with. This is really your professional snapshot. So it does not need to include every experience. Perhaps you worked somewhere early in high school in a customer service role, but since then, even in high school and college, you've had several other customer service roles. That may not fit on your resume at this point, right? And you have other experiences that support those skill sets. So you kind of judge that based on the timing of the experience, the relevancy, and whether you're already articulating those skills. And we can talk to you about that as well, more personally, specifically with your document. You don't want to include personal information or photos that can technically open up the door for discrimination in some capacity. And so ultimately, you know, sensitive and personal information, you know, age, race, et cetera, is not included. And the same goes for photos. I know it's more common for international students to include photos. That's not the case here domestically. So that will be not included on your resume. You will start to remove your high school education and experiences, especially as you progress through college, right? So certainly past sophomore year, that's going to start to fall off. Now, I've had specific cases with students in the past where they want to include their high school experience for specific reasonings, including maybe networking. Perhaps it's a highly reputable school in a certain area. They're going to be applying to positions near there. That's certainly fine. So for networking, alumni connections, that might be one example for that, but they're rare cases where we would keep them, because ultimately, right, as you graduate from high school and you pursue college and potentially grad school, that's going to become more relevant than your high school experience, not only for education, but for some of your work experiences as well. References are not included on your resume. They should be on a separate document. That's because they're not always asked for upon initial application, right? So if you include them, but they're not asked for yet, it kind of opens up the door for them to potentially contact them without giving you the chance to, you know, remind those references in advance. So list them on a separate document and only provide them when asked for in the application process. Like I said, you're going to want to begin your bullet points with strong action verbs that highlight skill sets. So you're ultimately going to want to avoid responsible for, duties include, etc., because that's more task oriented. You want to focus more on the action verbs with the skill sets. Like I said, you want a strong format. You want to avoid those typos, have a nice professional, clean format and presence. You want to be honest. So you want to be specific to the best of your ability with dates. So try not to guess at those. If you need to look back on dates, that's better. You want to, you don't want to overgeneralize your experiences and your skill sets. You want to be specific and concise, and supportive of those skills. Really important that you do not let anyone write this for you. This is your document. Anything that's on this document is fair game for an interview. You want to know this document in and out. So it's important for you to work on this. We can review it for you, critique it for you, assist you in that process, as can main career office, but that's something that, you're going to want to have ownership over yourself. Avoid any resume templates. We have wonderful career guides, as does the main Uptown Career Office. They also have some great resources that gives sample resumes, particularly for our Rockefeller students. But like I said, for any students that are non-Rockefeller, the main career office has amazing resources and sample resumes and documents as well. So refer to our career handbooks or to the main career office for that. Skills are very important if you haven't already noticed, because I've mentioned it a few times, especially on your resume and as you're applying to positions. So I wanted to reference a few main skill sets that NASPA, which is our accrediting organization, indicates, particularly for Rockefeller College students in public administration, public affairs, political science, criminal justice, international affairs, etc. And then I'm also going to talk about some transferable skills through NACE that are applicable to all students. It's important for you guys to identify these skill sets, because these are the skill sets ultimately on some level that you're going to want to articulate on your resume, right? And so as you can see here, NASPA lists out several career competencies and skill sets, including leading and managing, contributing, collaboration, analytical, critical thinking, problem solving, communication, articulation, interpersonal skills. I know that research as well, leadership, etc. These are all really important skill sets that are directly relevant for Rockefeller students and even transferable for many other students. So it's important to identify these skill sets as you think about your experiences and how you want to articulate them on your resume through your bullet point statements. And so NACE is another governing body for career services, stands for the National Associations of Colleges and Employers, and they have 8 career readiness competencies that were provided through a survey to employers across the country of what are the top skill sets you're looking for students for employment purposes. And they came up with these 8 career competencies, which, as you're seeing, are applicable to multiple fields and industries. So we call those skill sets transferable skill sets. So that means that they can apply to one position and a completely different position as well. So I often emphasize with students that many seasonal positions or, even campus leadership or organization positions will often help you develop these transferable skill sets: communication, critical thinking, leadership, teamwork, technology, etc., that are not only applicable to that club organization or that seasonal lifeguarding job, for example, but may also be applicable and good to highlight for future internship or job applications as well. So transferable skill sets are really important. Hopefully reading through these skill sets will help get you thinking about, what skills have I gained through my experiences, and how does that, how do I want to articulate that on my resume? Just to elaborate a little bit further on skills, and then I promise I'm going to move on. So what you're going to want to do in this case is not only articulate these skills through your bulleted experiences, but you're also going to want to create a separate skills section on your resume, that will incorporate skills based on the relevancy to your career path. So relevant to what you want to do. This will often include technical skills, sometimes language skills, sometimes certifications, but it will at times include transferable skills like we just talked about. You know, especially as you're gaining experience and you don't have as many of those relevant skill sets yet, highlighting those transferable skill sets, even in a skills section, can be helpful as you develop more relevant experiences or even transferable experiences. So you're going to want to incorporate them as well, like I said, into your bullet point statements. Focus on the accomplishments and skills used to do that. It's important to demonstrate the contributions, not just the names of the projects, tasks, organizations, but what was the skill set? How did you implement it? Right? So think about who, what, when, where, and why questions when you're providing that detail or supporting your skill sets. So I want to go over the anatomy of a resume in terms of the various sections with the resume and how you can work to build them out or enhance them. Many of you, like I said, probably have a resume, so this is going to go over ways for you to enhance those sections. So as a snapshot, right, these are ultimately some of the sections that you're going to want to have on your resume. As you can see, there's asterisks next to the sections that are really optional. A heading, mandatory. That should include your name, big and bolded, something to stand out, in addition to your contact information. So typically your phone, email, sometimes your LinkedIn profile link, in addition to like a location. That doesn't always have to include a full address. Not many organizations or employers are going to actually physically send you anything in the mail, but you should include some sort of a city and state location, either to Albany as a student here or your hometown, depending on where you're applying to, because it's really going to act as a location indicator more than anything else. Like, how close are you in proximity to a potential position? So let's say, for example, you're from New York City or the Long Island area, for example, and you want to apply to positions in that area, then listing that city and state as your location on your resume is wise, because it will show the employer you're close in proximity to that. Okay. The objective is next. That is not a required field or section. And to be honest, we've really kind of moved away from objective statements because they've become a little bit redundant to your education section in indicating where you're at in school and what kind of career path you're pursuing. A lot of that is already implied in your education section. So the education will absolutely be mandatory. That'll be your really kind of closer to the top first section on your resume as current students. And this should not only include, perhaps, let's say you're a master's student, this should not only include your bachelor's degree that you've completed, but also your master's degree in progress. That's really important. And for students who have transferred from community colleges, let's say, it can certainly incorporate a community college, particularly if you completed an associate's degree. So it can also include study abroad experiences as well in the education section. Honors awards, we list that as optional because it's not always going to be applicable to every student, but also because it doesn't always have to have its own section per se. It could also be incorporated right into the education section as a sub bullet point, and you'll see that momentarily. The same goes for coursework. We'll get into this, but coursework is optional for various reasons as well, and we'll get into that. And the same rings true for research experience, academic projects, presentations. We'll get into that, but that can be applicable for some and not all, and we'll touch on that. Work experience for sure is required. So this can incorporate, you know, a lot of students think, well, sometimes this is just a job section. It certainly can be for jobs, you know, part-time, seasonal, even full-time positions. But it could also incorporate professional experiences too, i.e. internships or fellowships. Sometimes students will choose to separate those sections into two sections, like I said, one for kind of relevant professional experience, another for additional, to highlight any relevant internships, fellowships, et cetera, or jobs first, and then focus on less relevant jobs as a secondary section. So that's an option too, and we'll go over that. Leadership experience can be listed alongside campus involvement, or it could be listed separately if you've had several leadership roles on campus, and we'll touch on that. Not a required section either, because not everyone has those experiences, but if you have them, it's really helpful to articulate, and employers really love to, and other graduate institutions really like to see that level of involvement. as do they with volunteer experience, but again, not applicable to everyone. Skills will be required to at least indicate computer or technical skills, languages, or any relevant certifications, potentially some transferable skills like we talked about. So education. So you're going to want to, as you can see in the sample here, and I included a master's example here, you're going to want to include the degree you're working towards, the subject area if applicable. So, you know, you're seeing here master's of international affairs, and then any concentrations or minors. So as you see here, concentration in global public management. Again, this student should also have a bachelor's degree listed beneath it. So it should include all degrees, associates, undergrad, grad, if applicable, begin with the highest degree. Again, reverse chronological order. So again, we emphasize reverse chronological order because it's most recent to oldest experiences. That's the order. And typically more recent experiences are more relevant, right? So employers are going to want to see that you have that master's degree first prior to the bachelor's degree. That'll be more relevant to them. You can include your GPA, particularly if it's above a 3.0 for undergrads, and you can include your major GPA as well if above your overall GPA. I mean, if the major GPA is below the overall, it's not as relevant to include necessarily. You can if they're close in nature, but it's, you know, certainly the overall is what's going to be the emphasis there. Like we said, remove high school education past sophomore year, except for those exceptions based on location or networking, etc. And not to worry, guys, I'll address questions at the end. Just want to kind of power through for the purpose of the recording. But so relevant courses, like I said, this is not always a required section. It can be listed as its own section, typically for students who are still developing relevant experiences to show knowledge, right, in those subject areas. It can also be a sub bullet point in your education section. So there's a few different ways in which you can incorporate this. If you're going to list this section or have it in some capacity, you want to list courses that are relevant to the position. You know, avoid introductory courses. If you're past them and you have more advanced courses, that's what's more relevant. Obviously, if you haven't reached those advanced courses, and the introductory ones are fine. Avoid the registration number that's specific to Albany. So I would rather focus on writing out the name of the course, for example, Economics for Global Affairs. Obviously, I would not include courses that have been a little bit more challenging for you and perhaps you haven't performed that well, because then again, that could be asked about in the interview per se, and it doesn't really highlight a positive necessarily. I often get students asking how many courses should I list. There's really no right or wrong answer to that. Typically somewhere in like the 3 to 8 plus, 4 to 8 plus region of courses. We don't need to list every single course we've ever taken in college because, you know, if they really wanted to see that, they would ask for a transcript. So just the relevant courses or the more advanced courses. Like I said, helpful if you're still developing that relevant experience, and not totally necessary if you have more relevant experience, internships, etc. Now, research academic experience can incorporate obviously research experience, but also projects, presentations, etc. So these are really helpful to include regardless if you have relevant experience or not. And this section should, I often have students ask, what's the difference between coursework and this? You know, typically this section is reserved for more involved, you know, advanced hands-on courses. You're completing a major group project, you're presenting, you're writing a very lengthy thesis or final paper, or you're conducting pretty extensive research, right? So typically this is included as you progress through college and certainly through grad school as you get to more kind of involved, relevant hands-on courses that are more higher level. So it's helpful because it will show really relevant skills and knowledge to your specific industry or field. So you'll include it in a similar format as work experience with bullet points, beginning with action verbs to highlight those skill sets and provide supportive results-driven examples. So again, as I mentioned earlier, you have a big project that you're working on with a group, you're presenting those findings. I would indicate that end result, show how, you know, who you're presenting to, how many people, if the number is higher, and what you're presenting on. And the same can be true for papers, etc. So Again, optional, but helpful as you progress through your college and graduate school careers. Your experience section, one of the, bigger sections on your resume, like I said, can include work experience, more professional experiences, sometimes even extracurricular if it's involved, or even volunteer. So, perhaps we have students who are more focused on working in the nonprofit sector and they work for, let's say, the Peace Corps, or, looking to work for the Peace Corps and have had similar relevant volunteer experiences. Those would be good to include on your resume, perhaps even in your experience section and not a separate volunteer, because it's relevant to what you want to do. So again, you'll create those sections based on your experiences, whether you have a relevant professional section, additional work experience, volunteer separate, or whether you combine some of those, for example. Again, listing those experiences in reverse chronological order. I'm sounding like I'm repeating myself a bit with that, but emphasizing that, using that proper tense, like I mentioned. So if an experience is ongoing, like I said, present tense, no longer occurring, past tense. You're ultimately going to include title lines with employer, organization information, location, city and state, your position title or your role, and the dates of employment in a month year format. And you'll see a sample of that momentarily. Again, you'll see a pattern here as well, bulleted statements for each section, beginning with action verbs to describe the job responsibilities, the skills, the projects, the accomplishments, etc. So experience headings and orders. So you'll see this is kind of an example of that. So relevant professional experience, like I said, can incorporate internships. It could sometimes be applicable for part-time or full-time jobs, fellowships, research, volunteer, like I said. Additional experience is typically more focused towards graduate assistantships, work study, seasonal jobs, etc. So working in retail or hospitality or lifeguarding, like I mentioned. Volunteer experience like Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, Vista, etc., can either be separate or even in relevant experience if applicable. And leadership will typically, can be combined with campus involvement or in its own section if you've had several e-board positions or you're involved in, more than one professional organization or affiliation. And you could perhaps combine that with campus involvement or list campus involvement separately to list other clubs you're involved in that don't involve perhaps leadership roles or more hands-on experience. So these descriptions, first word of each bullet point should summarize the skill described in that line. So again, giving you a few examples: communicate, collaborate, manage, lead, supervise, provide, analyze, evaluate, research, conduct. These are all strong action verbs to begin your statements. In our career handbooks, in our resume handbook in particular, we have a whole list of action verbs that you can reference that will be included on the presentation at the end. So you got to really paint a picture with details, right? Ultimately, when you apply to a position and you're submitting your resume or even applying to graduate school, you're ultimately proving an argument, right? And the argument is that you're the right candidate for a certain program or position. So we can only do that by backing up our skills with examples, right? So that's why it's so important. I like to look at it that way a little bit more than selling yourself per se, because you're proving that argument. You're backing up your experiences with honest, concrete examples, right? So that's why it's important to really be detail oriented, use those supportive skills experiences, with concrete examples, be specific, avoid abbreviations, use language appropriate to your field, address some of those questions: who, what, when, where, and why, and how many, to expand upon those bullet points. Don't just copy and paste the description from a job. I see that a lot. While that may be accurate and maybe you won't change much about it after reviewing it, you don't want to just copy and paste it and not look at that. You need to make sure that that's accurate. Also, often you'll do more tasks and gain more skill sets than what's listed in the job description. So we need to expand upon that. And that brings up a question 2, which is, I've had students ask as well, if they, I just lost my train of thought, but yeah, we'll move on. I came back from that. So be results driven as well. List achievements, skills, accomplishments, and results, not just the job responsibilities. Okay, and like I said, quantify wherever possible too. the question I was going to say, I've had students ask a question as well. Like if I list 3 bullet points for one experience, do I have to, there's an assumption that each experience should have 3 bullet points, and that's not true. More relevant experiences, internships, et cetera, are gonna have more bullet point statements than less relevant experiences. So they might have anywhere from 3 to 5 to 7 plus bullet points for relevant experiences, where maybe a less relevant experience might have more like 1 to 3. That doesn't need to be consistent. That should ring true to the position you're applying to and how relevant that experience is to that position. So some examples of before and after for bullet point statements, so you can really see the difference. I have reviewed resumes where they're as brief as this. And, rightfully so in some ways, students, when they're first getting their experiences on their resume, maybe just want to jot some notes down so they can recall, right? So maybe answered phones. But that's not nearly as strong as communicated with constituents to resolve issues or delegate to appropriate staff. That's much stronger to support the communication skill set. Similar with assisted with newsletter. Rather than just saying that, we're going to want to say wrote and edited monthly newsletter stories alongside a team of 2 professional staff or a team of fellow graduate assistants, right? That better supports written communication analytical skills, which is what they're highlighting there with these 2 examples in communication. So here's just an example. It's actually pulled 2 examples, actually, one for more relevant experience, one for additional, and it's actually pulled from our resume handbooks. So as you can see here, examples for, at least for our Rockefeller students, of more relevant experiences might be this research assistant position with the Center for Policy Research, as well as this intern with State Watch New York, where they have, at least a few or more bullet points to highlight the skill sets that are relevant to their industry here. Whereas this work experience down here, maybe the security guard with Saratoga Casino Hotel, obviously not as relevant to, let's say, public administration or public policy, but certainly some great customer service skill sets and transferable skill sets to highlight. So it just may be listed and not as lengthy as some other experiences, but still incorporating some of those transferable skill sets. So moving on to leadership club experiences and sample here. So, again, you're going to format your campus activities, leadership, volunteer experiences, just like your work experiences, with those specific title lines indicating organization, position, title, role, location, dates, etc. And this is, again, similar to additional work experience, great opportunity to highlight transferable skill sets. I've had lots of conversations with employers who have really specifically mentioned how they appreciate campus engagement and involvement. And that's because they can see that you're going above and beyond to support the campus. You're getting involved in different things that relate to your career path or will make you successful working for them in the future, right? So as you can see with both of these leadership experiences, and I wanted to pull these in because it gives you examples of a few of them. So obviously one of them is Public Affairs Student Association, which is more of a club organization, whereas the other one is a resident assistant position, which is a great campus position to list, where we're highlighting communication, we're highlighting teamwork, organization skills, program development, recruitment, sales, etc. So we're highlighting some really good transferable skill sets that could be directly applicable to a career in public administration, obviously. Skills. So like we talked about, this is a mandatory section because you do want to incorporate any technical skills. Now, if you're still developing technical skills, that's okay, but most of you should have some sort of proficiency or knowledge or basic information and exposure to Microsoft Office at the very least, given that that's what we use as a school here. But you can incorporate other more involved technical skills as well, Stata, Java, JavaScript, etc. Including languages is certainly important. I know some of my Masters of International Affairs students are on here, so certainly any exposure to that is helpful for that particular industry. And then again, you can have another little label there for general or professional skill sets to list transferable skill sets if you're still developing relevant skills to your industry. Oh, I don't know. Oh, okay. So formatting, I didn't think it would come out in this fashion. Just touching on this, I know we've touched on it throughout, so just a reminder: visual appeal, traditional style, 1 page, even margins, adjust the margins to fit your page. So they do not have to be 1-inch margins. You can adjust them to be narrow margins, 0.5, and maximize the size of the page too. So font styles, I get this question a lot. Really, there's no right or wrong answer to this. Again, you want consistency, but some common ones, obviously, Times New Roman, Calibri, Cambria, Arial, Garamond, etc. Like I said, consistency with capitalization, italics, bold. It's great to use italics and bold, particularly to highlight relevant information. So for example, job titles, names of organization, very relevant pieces of information. So using italics to highlight job titles, using bold to highlight names of organizations, great. Be consistent with that throughout. That will help employers target information, help you access information, make information stand out, etc. Font size can really be anywhere between 10 and 12. Obviously, that's not black and white either. You can certainly kind of adjust throughout that, but I would try to stay within those parameters, because if we go below 10, we're getting a little too small. If we go above 12, it's way too big. 11 is a great sweet spot, but again, feel free to adjust. You can even go like 10.5, adjusted margins. There's options here. Just be consistent. And you want to have proper bullet point alignment, indentation. I often see bullets kind of all over the place, over here and then over here and then over here. You want them nicely, cleanly aligned directly together. Okay. For organization flow, you're going to order those sections based on relevance, right? So if a student is applying to like an RA position, let's say, right, you're going to list potentially some leadership experiences, potentially before work experience, if you're still developing relevant work experience, right? Whereas if you're applying to an internship, right, in business economics or public affairs, like you're going to include those experiences, those internship or work experiences that you have, even grad assistantships beforehand, right? So it varies based on the person. Accurate section title headings as well. And we went over those just to make sure you're really depicting that information clearly, reverse chronological order. I won't kind of go over that again, but obviously that's important. And just some final best practices before we wrap up with some final services. Save and send your document as a PDF, okay? That's an image, it's a picture, so it won't adjust in formatting as you're sending it to different people, whereas Microsoft Word or Google Docs might. Label your resume file correctly. First name, last name, resume. I have seen situations where students have listed like a name of a company for a resume. That's the wrong company for that application. That won't look good, right? So make sure whatever works for you, whether it's your full name resume and a date, or you know, incorporating your name in some capacity, at least your last name is important. It helps recruiters access that information better. I've downloaded a lot of documents that just say resume, working with students over the years. So list those references separately, like we talked about. You'll provide those when called upon. You will create different resumes for different types of positions, particularly if they're vastly different based on the industry. And certainly post and transfer document information experiences via LinkedIn when you're done. LinkedIn is an excellent resource for you guys for networking purposes. Obviously, there's going to be plenty of opportunities to network in person, but LinkedIn's a great way to maintain your connections electronically and network virtually, right? You can reach out to alumni. We even have for Rockefeller, a Rockefeller College Alumni and Friends LinkedIn page where you can connect with alumni. I know the main University at Albany account has that too, to connect with alumni. We'll go through questions at the end. So what's next for you guys as we wrap up here? It's definitely time to get to work, especially if you don't have a resume or if you haven't looked at it in quite some time. So revise your resume, have it reviewed by us or the main career office, complete your Handshake profile and attach your updated resume, right? Hiring managers are accessing Handshake to post positions to hire you, right? So it's important to have that resume up there, updated, etc. Handshake is also where you can schedule appointments. So you can schedule appointments currently with Rockefeller staff, myself, Joan, as well as the main Career Center staff. So having your Handshake profiles updated as possible is helpful. You can also attend additional career events. You can access that information on Handshake for us and for the main career office. Network, start building relationships now with professionals already working in the field. Like I said, this is often a first impression, but if you network consistently and well, it doesn't have to be the first impression if you're making connections. So that's critical. Very crucial. I've seen that be exponentially helpful for students as they pursue internships and job opportunities. So sign up for the listserv and read your Rock Your Career newsletter weekly. That's our newsletter that's sent out weekly on Tuesdays. I know that the main career office and other departments here send out newsletters as well. That's where we put a lot of our relevant information. So definitely check that out. Like I said, update and create your LinkedIn profile, join the Rockefeller College LinkedIn alumni group or the main Career Centers alumni group. Participate in career fairs. I can't tell you how critical that is. I know that the main career office is hosting several coming up, and we will be engaging in some of those, including the government and nonprofit job and internship fair on September 27th from 10 to 3. We're also going to be hosting a CRCC career and internship fair in November, so stay tuned. And that will be open to both Rockefeller students and main Career Center students, both of them. So we have additional Rock Your Career Skills workshops coming up, presented by both myself and my colleague Joan. So we have the next one is coming up in a few weeks, and that's networking, followed by cover letters, internship job search, interview. We'll have more in the spring. So attend where you can. We will record them, but it's great to attend in live time because I'm about to address a bunch of questions I see in the chat as we wrap up. And we are also hosting a myriad of employer information sessions as well, including the next one is the FBI coming up. They're going to be talking about their honors internship program and other full-time career opportunities. They'll be here at the downtown campus in person, but we will have a Zoom option. That will not be recorded though, so please attend in real time if you can. That's September 7th at 4:30. Most of our career skills and employer information sessions are held from the 4:30 to 5:30 timeframe, as we find that works best for students. This one's Thursday, September 7th. So I'll be sending out communication about that tomorrow, actually, and as we approach the event. All of these events are on Handshake as well. But as you can see, we have some other great companies already lined up for sessions and hopefully more as we progress. So some final career resources here, our website and our career handbooks, our YouTube channel. This will ultimately be posted on there as well. Handshake, additional internship job sites. I will also share this presentation and recording with those who attended and with the class. Big Interview, LinkedIn, UCAN is our UAlbany Career Advisory Network. You can also connect with alumni through that avenue. Definitely connect with us through appointments. You can either schedule an appointment directly through Handshake, or you can drop into our drop-in hours. Joan is on Wednesdays from 2 to 4, either in Zoom or in the Uptown campus, and I am Tuesdays. It's actually adjusted 3 to 4:30. I'll make that adjustment on the presentation. And I'm sorry, that's actually Fridays 12 to 2. There's a slight error there, but I'll make that adjustment on the presentation. Mainly on Zoom, but I can meet in person by appointment only. So our graduate assistants will eventually connect with you guys as well through drop-in hours, so stay tuned. Don't send email appointment requests via email because it's really better for you to do it directly through Handshake. Of course, you can connect with us if you have issues with that, and you can also schedule appointments with the main career office. Finally, our contact information, just so you guys have it as a reference. So certainly connect with us, stop by our office, call us, email us with any questions, particularly Rockefeller students, obviously, because those are the students we mainly work with. But of course, we work closely with the main career office too, so we can help connect you with them as well.